all of them.
All righty. Hello, hello, hello. So welcome to
Hello.
Sis You Good. Glad to see you here. So, uh, welcome to Sis You Good. We are a well women group, and Sis You Good is founded on the principle of well, wholeness exemplified, loving life. And our mandate is to live life with passion and purpose. Uh, and our questions that we always ask are: does your passion and purpose show up in every facet of your life? Choosing to live well creates fulfillment, inspiration, empowerment, and most of all, freedom. So, welcome to Sis You Good, our monthly go live. We are here this month talking about sexual violence awareness. And we have some very special guests with us that I'm really excited to have join the conversation tonight. Um, but first, I want to just share a few statistics about sexual violence in the United States of America. April is, as I said, Sexual Violence Awareness Month. So we spotlight sexual violence and its impact on individuals and our communities. And so for our conversation this evening, we're actually going to be discussing specifically the prevalence of sexual violence against African American women in the United States. And I wanted to share a few statistics with you. So, according to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey that's produced by the CDC, African American women experience higher rates of sexual violence than any other racial or ethnic group. Approximately 22% of African American women experience rape or attempted rape in their lifetime. Approximately 40% of African American women report experiencing some form of sexual violence, including unwanted sexual contact or coercive sexual contact by the age of 18. And a study by Black Women's Blueprint, 60% of Black girls experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. So those are just some of the statistics, and they are staggering and disturbing for sure. So
Absolutely.
with tonight for our conversation, we have two very special guests. We have Delashawn Bordeaux, and Delashawn is a Fort Worth native and founder of Speak Our Truth Incorporated. It's a nonprofit organization derived to remove the negative connotation of speaking out against sexual abuse in the African American community. As a fellow survivor, Delashawn plans to use her personal experience and professional background in training and development to educate survivors on self-love, mental health, awareness, and other common short and long-term effects of sexual abuse, while providing a safe place for survivors and their families and friends to come together and learn via blog posts, YouTube, other social media websites to help reach a wider audience. Along with her nonprofit, Delashawn is obtaining a double bachelor's in marketing and management from the University of Texas at Arlington. She's a certified life coach and working to obtain a certification in nonprofit management. So, welcome, Delashawn.
Hi, Dawn. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here. This is one topic I could talk about all day. So
Yes, ma'am.
I am so glad to be here and help bring awareness to this situation. I'm going to call it a situation because
Yes.
it's really bad in the Black community. And I'm excited to talk about how that started from the beginning and led us to where we are.
Yes. All right. Welcome.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Jamae. I said it right, right?
You did.
Jamae.
You did. You got it.
Jamae Harris Edwards. She is a Christian wife, mother, Army veteran. Thank you for your service, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Uh, and a mental health clinician. She is also a Fort Worth native who matriculated through the Fort Worth ISD and graduated from O.D. Wyatt High School.
Yes.
She continued her education at Texas Wesleyan University. alumni. All right.
Yes, yes. Go Rams.
Yes, go Rams. Receiving a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Master of Art in Professional Counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. She has been a licensed professional counselor in Texas for more than a decade and provides supervision for newly licensed counselors. Jermae owns Perspective Counseling and Family Services in Arlington, Texas, where she provides therapeutic services in person and virtually. She also is a transformative leader at one of the nation's largest managed care organizations, where she's able to passionately support diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and health equity for most Texas's most vulnerable populations. So thank you, Jemai.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you. Thank you,
joining
Don,
us.
for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. So I am excited to have this conversation. Um, as a Black woman, I know a number of friends, families who have experienced sexual violence in a myriad of different ways. And as we talk about self care, mental health, and our organization, SYG Good, is focused on those areas. Um, we wanted to bring some more light and use our platform to have the discussion. Because we haven't seen the discussion. I know you guys are involved in the discussion, but it needs to be elevated, right?
Absolutely.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
so let's just talk a little bit tonight about, well, first of all, I want each of you to just share a little bit about yourselves. So we'll start with Delashawn. Tell us your story and how you got here.
Whew. So I was first sexually assaulted at the age of 14, and that lasted until I was 18 by a family member. I kept that to myself for many years until I was 25 years old. And once I had a daughter, having a child alone was just a trigger because I was unafraid to just leave her with her father and allow them to have that bonding experience. So I ended up going through postpartum because I was trying to be a mom and be awake all day and make sure, you can't be alone with her. She can't be in a room with her. And I was just really hurting myself, not realizing I was also hurting their relationship. So at that year, my ex-husband gave me an ultimatum. It was either you say something, you do something about this, or we're going to have to get a divorce. I took that I took that as my initiative to speak out, even though I wasn't prepared. And to be honest, not being prepared backfired on me because when things didn't go the way I expected it to, because I didn't know what justice looked like for me. Each person, justice looks different for them. And so for me, in my eyes, it meant that that person was done. They were going to go to jail. And when that didn't happen, they didn't even get indicted. It kind of was a backfire. I turned to things that were not healthy, drugs, alcohol, whatever made me just not feel the moment at that time. So as I continued through the years in 2017, I actually started going to therapy and I started blogging. I just wanted to share my story. I didn't know how it was supposed to look or why it was supposed to look this way. I just wanted to share it. And as I began to share it, I seen more and more people were like connecting to me and reaching out to me. And they were like, I've experienced this and I've experienced that. And there was one person on Facebook. I don't know who this person is to this day. They were a stranger. I remember they reached out to me and they said they wanted to commit suicide. And at that moment, I didn't really know what to do. I couldn't connect with them the way I felt I needed to. And things went silent. I don't know. I pray they didn't go through with it, but I just didn't know. And I didn't like that feeling. It was like a burden I was taking with me. So I decided I wanted to do more and decided to start the organization. I didn't know what that looked like either. To this day, I still don't know what that looks like. But what I do know, by any means necessary, I was spread awareness on what consent is. Because in order for us to really say sexual assault is an issue, we have to be aware that not a lot of people know what sexual assault is. They don't even know they're victims. And then some predators, unfortunately, don't know that they're committing a crime because they aren't sure what consent is. So I've made it my goal to continue to spread awareness on sexual assault and even more so being a safe space for Black women and men who are victims of sexual assault.
Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Mai, so if you'll tell us about the work that you're doing.
So I am a licensed professional counselor. Again, as you stated earlier, Don, I've been for more than a decade, so I see a variety of issues. I service families, children, as well as women. A lot of them come in with issues related to intimate partner violence, domestic violence. And one of the main issues that we face is people feeling psychologically safe and comfortable with being able to say, this is something that's happened to me. There's a lot of shame, guilt. Should I have done more? Should I have said more? That comes along with that. Although I haven't personally experienced intimate partner or domestic violence, is something that's very close to my heart. I grew up in Fort Worth in the inner city, went to ODY. So a lot of those things were things that were, I would say common. Things that, even when I think back, I had a Facebook friend that posted a little while ago, what age were you when a grown man tried to talk to you? And just reading through those comments, and you start seeing people, my own personal story was like 14, but then you see people 8, 9, 10. And even when we were talking last night, just, Black women being, sexualized at a very young age,
Yes.
oftentimes is something that we can't avoid, but definitely if we can raise awareness, let people know what to do when you're faced with those challenges, and being able to provide a safe space.
So we thank you for the work that you're doing. Definitely.
Thank you.
So you mentioned kind of the difficulties in calling out, right? And letting folks know that this is happening, right? So let me just ask, why do you think sexual violence is so underreported in the African American community?
I don't think that there's one thing. I'll go first, Delashawn. I don't think that there's
Okay,
one
look, I was
thing.
like, okay.
You have the church, which is a huge component of it. You have economics, because sometimes the person who's committing the crime is someone who may be financially responsible for the family. So you don't want to say, hey, this person is doing something to me, and then my family end up homeless, or things happen to my family, so I don't want it to be my fault. Also, just the state of America and things that happen to Black men and women when you do call the police. I don't want them to be necessarily punished, or you don't want them to die, or things like that. So I think that it's not just one thing that leads to under reporting. And then also what Nicole said, that when Delashawn said that, we don't know what consent is, or, teaching our young kids about sex oftentimes is so taboo.
Right.
We see on TV where they have the conversations in the birds and the bees, but I know in my family that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Nobody talked to me about sex.
No.
It just kind of happened, and it was like, okay, and
Yeah.
then there are ramifications after that. But, my family is products of teenage pregnancies and things like that. So oftentimes, we're just not, there's not a safe space. So there's not just one reason why it's underreported.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to your point about the families not talking about sex, right? Because I know in my family and with my friends, it was basically keep your legs closed. And that was the extent of the conversation,
Absolutely.
pretty much. So, Delashawn, did you want to add something to that?
Yes. So first, I want to talk about the fact that with Black women, for everyone who does speak up, at least 15 do not. And that's important to look at that number, because that lets you know, although it says 1 in 5 Black women have been sexually assaulted, that lets you know that number is very skewed, because what about everyone who didn't speak up, everyone who didn't know they were even sexually assaulted? But a lot of times we have to remember that it's because of the way we dress. They assume that we are already promiscuous. So they assume we wanted it. And we have to start teaching people that that is not the case. It does not matter. I like this term because somebody told me that I was this recently. Someone said I was ratchet and like to twerk. And when I hear stuff like that, some people see that as a way of saying, oh, okay, she's promiscuous and she may want to do that. No, not at all. I've been a woman who has been married. I'm in this a committed relationship now. So that does not equate to being over sexualized and that I want to have sex. But when you even look at the history of where sexual assault started back in slavery, it took 66 years for them to acknowledge that a Black woman could even be sexually assaulted. In 1800, they considered rape to be against a white woman who did not consent for you to know them. In 1866, they decided that Black women can be raped. So first, we have to acknowledge that it took a long time, even though that may have been years. That is how society started. Therefore, that has continued down generation after generation. The same people who were teaching them back then that Black women could not be sexually assaulted, they continued to teach their kids their kids taught their grandkids, and it's a so on matter. So now we tell them, oh, because they dance, because they dress like this, oh, this is what they wanted to happen. Or because it was an intimate partner, then it wasn't sexual assault. They had to have wanted sex because they were in the relationship. So it's unfortunately a big issue as to why so many don't speak out, but it's understanding, like, where do we begin to break those barriers so that we can start having those conversations and changing the perspective of the outside people who are looking in at us. I have a person I have been talking to the last few days, and to hear her story and the amount of trauma she experienced, to the point to where she's now in a wheelchair, and she still was not believed, all because the same nurse did not complete the same exam. That's a problem, because now we have to ask ourselves, well, why was she not believed? Or why was the same exam not done? Was this because it was a Black woman and we assume that Black women can handle the pain worse? So, okay, you were hurt. And in her story, she was kidnapped and sexually assaulted. Have a police report, but they won't believe her. And so you have to ask yourself, well, what exactly is it? I can be beat up, but you don't believe that it can be connected to sex. Or even if it wasn't a domestic violence situation, are we not going to tie this into how I was sexually assaulted so that I can get the help there? And when we continue to show that Black women aren't supported or Black men aren't supported as survivors, then society continues to look at them in the same manner, and they never change their perspective, and it just continues on throughout life.
That's very true. And to your point, I think part of that, when you said weird stuff, when Black women were not deemed as being able to be raped, right? That's part of the dehumanization of Black people, and specifically women. We were property. So that carries through to today, and it's very prevalent. I just want to there's a young woman that I knew that was assaulted by someone she knew. She was traveling out of state, and was assaulted by someone she knew. She did go and report it, had the rape kit done, all of that. But she came from a traumatic background, where there had been abuse as a young person, right? And so since she knew this person, she did not go through with completing the process of reporting it. But there were some things in the process, because she was from out of state. They wanted her to come back to the state, right? They weren't going to pay for her to get back there. She would have had to bear some financial struggles to get back there. And then when she decided not to go through with it, they sent her a bill for the medical exam. So when that was shared with me, I was like, where is the victim in this? Why are you making the victim responsible for the processes that should take care of them or help them through this process, right? So I think there are a lot of things that are contributing to, as you said, Jermaine, a lot of things contributing to not reporting, right? Relationships, financial situations, simple
lack
fear.
of support.
Lack of support, not being believed. So I just want to say, we have joining the conversation is Angela Cross from Fierce and Fearless. So welcome, Angela.
Hi, Angela.
Hey, Angela.
Okay, we can't hear you.
Oh no.
Oh. Okay, I have somebody in the chat that says, it seems many times it is victimization of the victim, and it compounds their trauma. Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, definitely.
And you said something. You said it was used to dehumanize the woman. I have been saying that a lot lately, because I don't even think we realize it's how it was initially started to also criminalize the Black man. It was like a twofold thing. They used sexual assault as a way to lynch men back then, no matter what the actual issue was. If you were stealing, well, we're going to say you raped somebody because we know we can get you lynched.
Even when you think of Emmett Till.
Yes.
Like whistling at a white woman. Something that has been
prime example
that didn't happen. And you think about whole life, 14 years old, gone because of, sexual assault that did not occur.
And
that
it
did not.
happens so much even to this day where they run. If you even just look at the Michael Irvin story that just happened not too long ago, where he
Yeah.
lost so much because he was accused, falsely accused, that also puts a fear in victims because
Yeah.
when we have people who falsely accuse other people, it's like you're working against true victims. And unfortunately, we're afraid to speak out because we don't want to go through the backlash that we have seen someone else go through because you lied and the victim didn't get the help they actually
They
needed.
need it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let me just ask. We talked about some of the misconceptions about, how we dress as women, right? Or how we dance. What are some of the other common misconceptions about sexual violence in the African American community?
That we wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
That is the main one. It's assumed that we wanted it, as if we don't have that right or the authority to say no and mean what we say and stick to it. That is the biggest one.
Okay. That's there.
Absolutely. I would definitely agree. Oftentimes, dress, the way that you carry yourself, or, maybe she was dancing provocatively, all of those things lean to that, that person wanted it or even that they deserved it.
Mm,
Right.
that one, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I guess so what are some things we can do to better educate and inform first African American women about sexual violence and prevention? And then once we talk about that, I want to go to the community and the men, right? So what are some things that we can do to help bring awareness and to educate ourselves?
First thing first, believe survivors when they stand up. I know we say innocent until proven guilty. I work very backwards when I work with survivors. I believe you until you show me that you're lying. I need proof because I don't want to. I'm your safe space, so I at least want to be. If nobody else believes you, I want to be by your side until they absolutely. We're gonna ride until the wheels fall off, and we'll go together because I don't know what may be keeping someone else from believing you, but if I could stand with you and let you know, hey, you have support, then at least you have a team that's going to go forward and be there by your side as you go along the process. But the other thing is truly spreading education, however that looks, whether it's, I tell you, I will, however you see me, I'm going to talk. It might be on YouTube. It might be on a podcast. It might be on Facebook Live. Someone may come ask me to speak, or I just might start sharing stuff on Facebook. But guess what? You're going to get it. And it's going to have pretty pictures and all this stuff so that you can remember it. But I always say, in order for you to even understand sexual assault, you have to know what it is. Anytime I have a conversation, whether it's on live or on anytime I have a conversation with in person, like at a seminar or something, or if I'm doing a webinar, the first thing I do is tell the definition. I can be in a room full of sexual assault survivors. That don't mean you know what it is.
Right. That's
So
true.
I start with the definition. And it's so many times afterwards, I get someone who pull me to the side and say, I didn't know I was a victim. And then I'm like, I get it. And I understand when they say, well, because I was with this person and I didn't know I could say no, or I didn't know I was a victim to this. And so now I had to start changing it to where I can say, some of you may have realized today that you've been a victim of sexual assault. Here are the resources if you don't want to talk to me. That lets people know that, okay, I might have just gotten the worst news ever. And what I thought was just a little freaky situation is more than what it was, considering I cried the entire time. And now I have to
Or
go
I
get
was
some
inebriated where I couldn't speak, or so many different instances.
Right. And they
Yeah.
just assume, hey, it was just a part of the night. And it happens a lot in college students too, because that first year, the first 3 months, they call it the red zone. When you're at school, your first time out of the house, you may be drinking more, so you're partying more. And a lot of our students, sexual assaults rise by 50% between August and November. And a lot of students
Really?
then don't know because they are inebriated. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I see that you, especially college, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're away from home, more freedom,
First time away
more
from home. Yes.
right.
hanging out with your friends, and you don't, when you haven't been out. I was a child who was always in the house, so when you go out that first time and you don't know what to do, you don't know that limit, you just, oh my gosh, I could drink, and it's fun and games until you wake up in a situation when you're not sure what's happening. And then you don't know what to do because I'm embarrassed and I can't say anything because they're not going to believe me, and I was intoxicated, and everybody, all my friends were there and they had sex and they wanted it, so I must have wanted it at that time too.
Right.
How do we deal with that?
Right. And that's where some of the guilt and it was my fault. I shouldn't have. Right. So to your point, so let's just back up a little bit and let's talk about, so how do we define sexual assault? What is sexual assault?
Hold on. I'm actually going to go. I posted this today and I'm going to read exactly what sexual assault. I'm going to read exactly what sexual assault is, and then I'm going to read what consent is. And we're going to cover it all.
Place to start.
So, what is sexual assault? The term sexual assault refers to sexual contact or behavior that occurs without explicit consent of the victim. Some forms of sexual assault include attempted rape, fondling or unwanted sexual touching, forcing a victim to perform sexual acts such as oral sex or penetrating the perpetrator's body, and then penetration of the victim's body, which is also known as rape. There is a such thing that a lot of people don't know about either. That's called digital rape, which means you can be sexually assaulted by someone using their fingers against you if you didn't consent to it.
Oh, okay.
So it is important to remember that. But then when you know what sexual assault is, it's time that we understand what exactly is consent. So let's see. Consent is permission for something to happen or agreement to do something. And I always say, if you have consent, if you can pass the fries. And I really want you to think every time you eat some fries, I want you to think about this so it becomes repetitive in your head. So when we say fries, consent is freely given and should not be pressured, coercive, or forced. It's reversible. It doesn't matter when they change their mind, but anyone can change their mind. So I don't care if it's been the best 45 minutes of your life. When that person says no or stop, it stops immediately. They must be informed. They should not be intoxicated or inebriated. One thing to remember is if they can't say no, they can't say yes either. It's a two-way street.
That's good.
They must be ecstatic. This is when I always say, now we know how we are when we really in the mood. We happy. Our body is showing it. We want to go there. So you should be ecstatic. If a person is kind of not sure, or they're like, maybe, or they feel like they're just saying yes because they want to please you, that's not consent. And consent does require you to also look at the body language, because if a person, they may not say no, but what if I'm crying, or if I look like I'm tense, or I'm just laying there? So it's important to pay attention to that. And then last but not least, remember it's specific. So if I come and I say, yes, we can kiss, that does not mean that you get to touch or fondle my body anywhere else. Just because I may let you hug me doesn't mean we're going to have sex. It's important to remember that. And I have become accustomed now to even hugging people and saying, may I hug you? Is it okay if I hug you? That away from the get-go, I know that you have given me consent to do that, and it becomes habit over time.
Oh, that's good.
And even I think that, just to add with what you said, Delashawn, that consent is for everybody, even for children.
Yes.
Sometimes when we, especially in a Black family, go up, be like, oh, give such and such a hug. The kids have the ability to say, no, I don't want to hug this person, or I don't want this person touching me. It's not disrespectful. It's not being disrespectful to elders. We have the ability to say what we don't and what we will do, even as kids.
Yes. That's a great point, because I have a 3-year-old grandson, and we've taught him that. It's like, do you want, you don't have to hug everybody, right? So that's good. And to that point, so just thinking of children, one of the things that I learned a long time ago is teaching children their body parts.
Yes.
The correct terminology. For their body parts, to help them identify if something does happen, they can explain it using not my wee wee, my my tata, my tutu,
Mm-hmm.
the
My
actual body
cookie or
part.
anything like that, because especially when you're coming to a clinician or you're going to a SANE nurse, if you're telling
Right.
someone this person touches my cookies every night, they may not know that this is really them reporting it versus them saying, oh, they eat cookies every night, and it's not the same.
Not the same. That's a great point. So you've said a SANE nurse. So tell me what a SANE nurse is.
A SANE nurse is a nurse who is trained to provide examinations after sexual assaults. So, in
Mm.
order for you to get your rape kit, it is usually, and I know in Tarrant County and in Dallas County, there are only certain facilities. I know Parkland is one of them, JPS is one of them. You can't go to every hospital and get a SANE exam. Usually, a SANE nurse has to come to that facility, or you have to go to a facility where a SANE nurse is, and it's SANE.
Yes.
SANE. Okay. All right.
Um, I know for it's usually Texas Health. I'm looking at my phone because Cindy Burnett is actually a SANE nurse with Texas Health, and we have worked together. She works. They have Fort Worth and Dallas locations, but they're Plano, Allen, Dallas, and Denton has services. And then Methodist and Parkland are also areas in Dallas where you can go. And if ever you have been a sexual assault victim and you want to get tested to for the exam, you can contact the Tarrant County Women's Center or the Dallas Area Rape and Crisis Center, and they have advocates who will sit there with you so that you're not uncomfortable and you're not alone as you go through the process. Because unfortunately, because they have to make sure that you have not been physically injured at the same time, it's going to be a lot of touching, poking, and uncomfortableness.
Mm-hmm.
So they do have people who will actually go there with you. And remember, even if you don't report at that moment, that exam, it can be kept so that we don't have so that you can get the help when you're ready. I can't remember the time frame, but it can be kept so that you don't have to report immediately.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you do want to report, if you've been sexually assaulted, please try not to take a shower so that they can have all the evidence that's needed.
Mm. That's
Absolutely.
good advice. It's definitely good advice. Okay. Well, let me just ask. So, um, how do I phrase this? How do you believe that sexual assault or sexual violence, how does it affect African American women different than other groups?
We lack the resources. So a lot of times we don't get the help we need. When I was a victim, I had no idea that we had places like Tarrant County Women's Center. I had never heard of a SANE nurse. I didn't know any of this. And if I knew what I knew now, although I was in high school, I would have did some sneaking around to make sure somebody got me some help, if I knew there was protection there. So a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time it's the fact that we don't even have the resources. We don't know about the resources that are available to us. So we don't say anything. We kind of just shy away from it and keep it to ourselves, and we live with that trauma within.
Yeah, I definitely think lack of knowledge
Hmm.
plays a huge part into it. Shame, guilt, feeling like that, that we deserved it. Being over sexualized. There isn't a person that I can think of that's a Black woman that when they present, even in their everyday work, I think I told you about this, Don, yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Even Serena Williams, as she plays tennis, is
Right.
sexualized, and she's just there
Hmm.
to do a job.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't one place where we can go where our sexuality doesn't come up.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely. Definitely. Well, when we think about kind of changing the narrative, right? Um, what are some things how can we engage men and boys in the fight against sexual violence?
With
I think
them, to be
Nicole
honest,
has it
I was gonna
has it
say,
on lock, teaching about consent,
yep.
what consent is, what sex is, because I think oftentimes people equate sex with love or taking the relationship
Right.
to the next level when that doesn't mean that at all. But again,
Mm-hmm.
that knowledge.
And I would say it needs to go back to actual sex ed in general. We don't have sex ed, so do men and women understand the effects of sexual assault? you can be sexually assaulted and still have unwanted pregnancies. And let's be real, what happens if you have an unwanted pregnancy now because you're a sexual assault victim? That bill does not protect sexual assault victims. So unwanted pregnancy, STDs. So in general, we need to bring back sex ed, and in sex ed, we need to not just teach abstinence, because even as adults, we struggle with that, but teach what it looks like, to what consent is, what protection is, and how to have healthy
And
sex
healthy
life versus.
sexual relationships.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't have anybody in school now, but I know my daughter, there was no sex ed at all in her school.
I
And
remember
so,
1 year for me, just 1 year,
really,
and I don't even know what
Yeah,
I
I think
learned.
maybe fifth or sixth grade. And this happens so, like right when you're going through puberty. I don't think it
Mhm.
happens when you really need the answers.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
And I
And
have
I
an
have
11
I
year
have
old.
one in elementary,
Mhm,
who's developing, and one that's in high school. And I
mhm.
think that things are just so crazy right now.
Right. Yeah.
And to have girls, I
And
have two girls.
okay. Wow. Yeah.
Now I will say this, and I have an 11 year old. Um, what I'm learning now is, because I have pounded in her head just because of what I do, what sexual assault is, but also like trying to find that healthy medium so then they're not afraid of sexual assault.
Right.
Because we also went to a phase where she was like, I don't want to go around any men. And I was like, okay, that is not what we were going for at all.
Right. Mhm,
But I do want you to know that you're safe and that you have a right to
mhm.
speak up. And this is what it looks like if you're not in a safe situation.
Yeah.
So sex ed in general is very important. So they understand like the good, the bad, and the in between, but they're also educated on what that looks like.
Right. And I think to Jermaine's point was that um, telling them, teaching them, right, our daughters and our sons, what
Mhm.
healthy relationships are, right? What healthy interaction is, and what healthy sex looks like. Because right now, as you said, we can't depend on the school system to provide any level of education. So it's up
But
to
should
us.
they though?
Yeah. I think, well, I think providing a look, so, mm,
I'm
well,
gonna say no. The only reason I say that is because I don't want anyone to teach my child their version of a healthy sex life
it's,
unless there's a
right.
That,
traditional.
Oh,
or
okay. Yeah. No, 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 not the healthy sex life part. I was thinking more of like when I was back in ancient times, when we had sex ed in school, they taught us basically it was uh, about diseases. And
Mhm.
that scared
Mhm.
me enough. Just like,
My mama did
I
that
don't
to
want
me
no
too.
parts of none of
My
this.
mama did that to me.
But I think
So
that
it's like,
oftentimes we pass so much of our burden of parenthood on to teachers, on
yes,
to,
that is true.
counselors. Even when I think about, I have lots of friends who are school counselors, and school counselors, they're clinicians in their own right, but oftentimes they do not get to focus on the emotional well-being of the kiddos. They are
Mhm.
focusing on schedules, making sure they're in the right classes. So when
Right.
those things come up,
Hmm.
they, may not have the bandwidth to do that. They
Hmm.
have crisis interventions in school, but I also think parents have to be involved. So
Yeah.
even if we do bring it into the school, at what point as a parent are you going to pick it up and talk to them about it? Because oftentimes, if it was like my upbringing, it wasn't talked about. It
Right.
wasn't something that, hey, we had sex ed at school today, or we're going to sit around a table and kind of discuss what you learned
Right.
and, have some healthy dialogue about it. It
Yeah.
was just like, you better not do it.
Right.
You know what?
Exactly.
That I'm not gonna lie, that kind of gave me an idea. I will freely put myself out there. If you're afraid to have a conversation with your kid and you're watching, call me, text me, inbox me. I'll have
All
the conversation. We can do, you will have to be present.
right.
You will have to be present and you will have to sign some things, because
Yeah.
maybe you need the talk just as much as your child if you're not able to have that conversation.
Yes.
But I would be absolutely willing to have those classes. At one point, I wanted to have the conversation for my daughter's age, and we were going to do keychains and conversations where you teach them about the self-defense keychains,
Hmm.
but also teach them about being, what consent is and things like that. So if you're a parent and you're struggling, because sometimes it is the absolute most difficult conversation, and maybe you don't have the knowledge or the capacity to have that conversation, let me know.
Hmm.
I'll do a one-on-one with you and your child, or we'll set up some group sessions and we'll have classes for everyone.
Yeah.
I would definitely highly recommend, we're in prom season. Start teaching these high school students right now and making sure they're aware of what consent is prior to going to prom.
Absolutely. Don't just send them off with a condom and tell them to be safe. You may send
Right.
them off with a condom and tell them to be asking for some consent.
Yeah.
Especially if you buy your kid a hotel room.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. So you guys have heard it. So Delashawn is putting an offer out there.
Yes.
I back that 100% because as we were talking about this, one of the things I was thinking was like, okay, so if we don't do it in the schools, we know that the parents aren't equipped to do it. So who equips the parent to have the conversation, right? So thank you for that. Definitely.
Listen, I'm always willing to get up and talk and train. teach you about something.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So let me just ask then. So we talked a little bit about the men, like where the men fit in this, right? So men and boys. So, but what role do they play in promoting the awareness and prevention? So we talked about they need to be educated, but what role do they play in helping to prevent it and promote the
I
awareness?
think much like in any big thing that's going on, being an ally, speaking out when you see things that are going on that may not be on the up and up, saying, "Hey, man," or really just being an ally and speaking up and telling other people, you see something, say something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, we have to change that other perspective of I don't want to be a snitch. I tell
Yeah.
people I'm telling everything. I don't care. I'm telling on you. I don't care if you steal some bubble gum, I'm telling. But the thing is we have to get to that point in life where we're willing to speak up and tell, as Jamae said, because if you just sit back and you know that your friend has been a predator and they've either sexually assaulted somebody, don't been a domestic violence predator or whatever it is, and you don't say anything, to me you're just as guilty because you're condoning it and making it feel like it's
Listen,
okay.
complicit.
Yes,
Complicit is the
And
word,
complicit.
that's
right?
Yes, yes. And even in those situations we were just talking about, like prom and college, right? And we know that, and I know even when I was in school, there were lots of stories about things that happened at, some frat parties, that type of thing, and all of that. So being in those situations, being that advocate, being the voice of reason to help stop some things from happening. And I know it requires courage, but in the end, it's going to be better for everybody.
yes.
So,
And
Absolutely.
ain't no friendship worth keeping if you don't feel like you can speak up and let them know when they're in the wrong.
Absolutely. Well, we
yeah.
have to lose that ride or die mentality on all sides,
Yes.
that we're going to ride with people to the end. And then that means,
Yeah.
riding with them to when they break the law, when they do something wrong, do
Hmm.
something immoral. We have to be able to set healthy boundaries and tell people, hey, I don't agree with this, or this
Right.
isn't something that I stand for, no matter if it sometimes takes losing the relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's very true. It's very true. Well, let me just ask, so how can we ensure that survivors of sexual violence have access to culturally responsive care and services?
Oh, that's a hard question
That is.
because oftentimes, in the age of diversity, equity, and inclusion, sometimes, having people who are culturally competent is difficult, or finding
Mhm.
people who really understand what the difference is, that my experience as a Black woman may not be the same as someone who's Caucasian, who's Asian. So I definitely
Mhm.
think it's going to take some research. It's going to take, reaching out to people, asking them, not being afraid to say, is this referral that you gave me, what ethnicity are they, or even
Mhm.
asking questions when you get that referral. I have people who ask me all the time, do you have experience in X, Y, and Z? Just because I'm Black doesn't mean I'm monolithic. I don't have every experience just because I'm Black. So I think
Right.
asking those questions, because someone may be better suited for you, it may not be me. And then as a
Mhm.
clinician, bearing that responsibility, not to take on everyone just because I'm Black, or I feel like that because I have this set of credentials that I can help everybody. That
Mhm.
may not be my ministry, and being able to say that, but being willing to go and point them in the right direction. you know, I may not be the person, but let's work together to find you someone.
Find somebody. Yeah.
I truly believe what they say, representation matters, but there's so much in representation. And I don't even know if this is possible, because if you ask me, you need a representative for everybody. You need a representative for the trans victim, because I may not be able to relate to some of the experiences that you have. You need a representative for the Black victim, which that is why I stood up in this space alone, because, hey, Black women, not white people, don't know what it means to be, what happens in my house stays in my house. So when you say that, they look at you like, what? What is it? Well, no, then I don't want to talk to you because you're already judging me. So I want to go talk to somebody who knows what I'm talking about, who has that understanding on why I may be quiet. So I don't know if it's possible to have representation of everything, but I would say there needs to be representation. And then from my end, I would say you have to build those relationships. Yes, I'm a nonprofit, but I'm not here to do it by myself. There's a reason why I work with Darcy. There's a reason why I work with Tarrant County Women's Center. They have more resources, as well as they also are able to help different backgrounds and ethnicities, because they have the capacity. So yes, I might be that representative for the Black community, but I'm your advocate, and I'm just going to go with you along the way as even we go sit with them, because maybe you don't want to be by yourself. And unfortunately, we need a whole different representation for men. That is my biggest thing I have said. I was like, I want a sexual assault organization where men are standing up and being able to advocate on behalf of men, because it's still the rate is 1 in 6 men, which means it's almost as high as 1 in 5 women. So are we not looking at that? Like, hey,
Right.
representation matters in that area, and we need to make it okay for them to speak up and say, I've been a victim, without feeling like they're feminine just for saying something.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's
or that it can't happen to them because of their gender.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a huge point there. Because as we thought, we're having conversations about this conversation, not having conversations about this conversation. Men who have experienced sexual assault didn't come into the conversation. And part of it is because we're women, and so we're focused on women. But when I think about it, a lot of perpetrators have been perpetrated upon. Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's this cycle that continues through. So it's up to us. We have to address it from as many sides as we can in order to stop it. Right. So,
and as women,
absolutely, with some empathy and passion.
Yes. And now sometimes, I mean, until those men are comfortable to speak up and speak out, I think as women, we should be able to create that space, because we do have an understanding of what it's like, even if we're not a victim, but some of our closest friends are, and they're comfortable talking to us. So we may have an understanding. I think we just have to begin to really create a safe space for everyone without coming up with reasons why they can't be victims, and understanding that they are victims.
Yeah.
Because psychological safety is probably the most important thing.
What was that? Could you repeat that?
I said psychological safety. It's probably the most important thing. Safety, being safe and being comfortable with that person and with the environment, and being able to kind of, lay your burdens down.
Yeah, that's true.
I had a talk with a friend, and I'm gonna tell you, this is the perspective I put it in. And when I told them, they was like, oh, that's different. I said, a lot of times we look at men and we see them sleeping around, and we say, oh, they're hoes, or they're this and we're that. But what we don't realize is a lot of men were sexually assaulted when they were younger. And because it was an older woman, they were looked at as, oh, you bagged your older woman, or, oh, you got a cougar, or it was cool. But what they didn't realize is that they were being sexually assaulted. And at that time they had, I say, the itch that they couldn't scratch. And so it's not that these men are just hoes, it's that they had an experience way too early with someone who should not have been touching them at that time. And so therefore they're still trying to heal. And if women can be promiscuous from being sexually assaulted, then why would you not expect the same for a man? They're going through the same trauma we are. However, we're looking at it from two different angles. We're looking at women as victims and men as hoes. And that's not the case. Mm-hmm. We started off, and I say we, but it's like we started them off wrong and it would probably more of their friends encourage them. Yeah, get her. She's 33. Who cares if you 15? Ooh, you cool, and I'm gonna try it too. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
She belonged right in the same jail that the men perpetrators belong in.
Right. And if you
Absolutely.
look
And
from
I
a
think
cultural
it's a
standpoint,
human experience.
yes, it is a human experience.
Yes.
But when we look at it from a cultural standpoint, um, we kind of men that go out and conquer, right? As many sexual conquests as you can, but girls don't. Like
Right.
you don't do that. So it is a double standard. But when you're saying men go out and got boys go out and conquer, oh yeah, my boy, my boy, my boy, who is it that
Mm-hmm.
they're conquering, if you will, right? So
Absolutely.
when that mentality is pervasive, then it contributes to the 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 culture, the rape culture, the
Yes.
assault culture.
Absolutely. Definitely
Mhm.
promotes the narrative. Even when you think about R. Kelly, just how
Right.
long that situation went on, how
Yes.
many times people were, inundated with it. You're listening to his lyrics, even going back, I was an avid R. Kelly fan until you start to listen to it and hear these
Mhm.
stories, and you like, he isn't singing about something that is possibly happening. He's singing about things that he is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I
Yes.
think about having a daughter, and if my daughter was interested in singing, both of my daughters are very talented singers, and I took them to someone like that, and for them to be taken advantage of. And
Mhm.
oftentimes there's victim blaming. Well, what did the parents think? And all of those things. Well, he's a grown man. Why would he be interested in a kid?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. It just was when you bring him up. So I remember. So when my younger sister, I think she was in high school, and I convinced my parents to let her go to an R. Kelly concert. I had never
Mhm.
been. And I was like, I listened to some of his music, but I was never like, oh, huge, huge fan. And she had gone to the concert, and afterwards I was like, well, how was it? Well, she was traumatized. Like, she was like, he had brought somebody on stage in the simulation of sex on stage. She's like 13, 14 years old. I never had any concept that that's what was going to happen at the concert, right? So I didn't
Mhm.
know. But now, as we're talking about it, and I'm thinking, the young lady that had been pulled on stage, was that what she really wanted to happen? You
Hmm.
start thinking at a deeper
But
level,
then
right?
people normalize so many things that happen to victims that,
Yes.
you know what type of music they have, or what they're
Mhm.
going to do.
Mhm.
Just because their music may allude to that, or things that they may have done, you may have an inkling, but doesn't mean that you deserved it or that you wanted that to
That's
happen
Right.
to
true.
you.
Right. But then there's the kind of the, oh, well, if I say something, or people are going to talk about me, or it's like, it wasn't that big
Judgment.
of a deal. Why are you making a big deal of it?
And what
Right.
people have
Oh,
to
absolutely.
understand, trauma is not what you go through, it's your reaction to the experience. So you can't tell me that it's not a big deal because you don't know how I'm going to react or you don't know how that made me feel.
Right.
And so people have to stop, just making it seem like it's nothing
Right.
because
Yeah.
it's
I
absolutely
tell
Because
something.
people
your
all
People
the
carry
time, you
this.
can't tell
exactly.
people how to feel.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. And what's traumatic to you may not be traumatic to me, but what's traumatic to
Mhm.
me may not be trauma for you
Exactly.
either. Right.
Absolutely.
So,
And
yeah.
people are entitled to their feelings. Oftentimes we say,
Yes.
"Oh, I'm sorry, I don't mean to do this." I have people constantly apologize, and I, tell them, "No, you're entitled to feel that way. Don't stuff those feelings, because oftentimes that leads to more trauma, because you feel like that
Mhm.
you don't have the right to feel that way. We have the right
Mhm.
to feel every emotion on the spectrum that we feel, and no one can tell us that we shouldn't feel that way."
Exactly.
Agreed.
Yeah. That's very true. That's very true. Well, let me just ask. So we've talked about resources that are available in the Dallas Fort Worth area, the Tarrant County Women's Center, the SANE nurses at the hospitals. I think you said Texas Health,
You
JPS.
have you
Uh,
have RAIN, which is an online resources.
Yes.
Or I
okay.
think it's RAINN, and I'll have to look it up. I think it's rate,
Okay. Yeah, I think it's
something like what they
Rain.org.
stand for.
RAINN. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Rain.org. And if y'all want, look, I can give you, I put that on my flyer too. I can gladly give you the 24/7 hotline for Rain. It's simple. It's 1-800-656-HOPE. Or just remember HOPE, 1-800-656-HOPE. And then they're available 24/7. And they also have a list of local resources that you can get from them if you're needing the assistance. They allow nonprofits and other organizations who assist with sexual assault to sign up so that when people need some help, you can get the help you need by going through them. So don't forget you have resources. And if you're scared, don't be afraid to reach out to someone who is willing to walk that journey with you.
Yeah. Safe Haven is another one in Tarrant County. That's for domestic violence. We also have the Women's Center in Tarrant County. There are a lot of resources. I think I want to say there was recently an SMS number that you can call or text. Oh yes, 88788. That just a toll free that you can text. You don't actually have to call someone. Much like for if you're having thoughts of suicide, you can text 988. So those numbers are super duper handy to have. If you're just needing that support, or if you're not in a place where you can say, what's going on with me, or have the ability to talk, because sometimes we may not be at a point where we've left that person who's doing these things to us.
Right. So can you give us those numbers again? The text number was 88. Did you say 88?
88788.
Okay, 8878. Okay, awesome. Thank you for that.
And then 988 is the number for suicide prevention.
For suicide prevention, 988. Okay, so 988 for suicide prevention, and 8878 if you're in a situation.
788.
788. Okay. Yes. So those are resources available to you. Spread that information, share that information with everybody that you know, right? Because as we've had in this discussion, we've discovered that we were talking about women, but men are victims as well. So we need to care for all of us.
Absolutely.
So we're about 4 minutes out. So I want to just learn a little bit more about both of you. So I have some questions for you.
Okay.
So who would like to go first?
Me.
I'll let Nicole go first.
Okay.
You should sound like me.
All right. So Miss Delashawn, so what advice would you give your younger self?
Whew. If I could go back, the only thing I would say is speak up. Don't be afraid. You're going to lose people, but it happens. Over time, it does eventually get better as long as you have the right support system. So I would have definitely told myself to speak up sooner.
Okay, awesome. And what does self-love mean to you?
This is a long journey. I have come to learn this is a long journey. When I look at self-love, I always, and people are going to get mad at the last one, but I don't know what to say about that. I always say there's a few things, self-awareness, because that affects my self-love, how I see myself, how I visualize my self-talk. And that's the area where I really struggle, is how I talk to myself. Any small thing makes me doubt myself, and then I end up undoing all the work that I've done. Confidence, rebuilding that confidence, because sometimes when I'm not going to say sometimes, really all the time, when you experience some type of trauma, you lose a lot of confidence in self-worth and who you are. I also believe part of self-love is forgiveness. And I'm not just talking about forgiving the other person. I'm talking about forgiving yourself, because sometimes as victims, part of that blaming is us blaming ourselves and saying it was our fault, even if it wasn't our fault. So we have to first forgive ourselves. And then once we really forgive ourselves, then we can begin to forgive the other person to move forward. And then the last one, I promise you, let me explain it for y'all get mad. It's accountability. And it's not the accountability of the other, what you could have done, but it's my job to go and get the help I need after I've experienced this trauma. It's my job to go to therapy and stay consistent in therapy. It's my job, if I get a coach, to do the work. I don't want to just meet with you. And somebody got mad because I said this. And I was like, but why would I take your money if you're not doing the work? this is not for me. I can sit with you and tell you some things. Hey, go journal, go do this, whatever. But if you haven't already set up for one, if you haven't already started going to therapy, I don't really want to coach you because I'm not your therapist. I am your coach. My job is to stay on you and make sure you're doing what your coach told you to do. I mean, what your therapist told you to do so that you can actually get on that journey. So self-accountability is really part of self-love because sometimes we're our own hindrance from healing.
Yeah, that's huge.
Absolutely.
And it's right on point. Yes.
I have to say I'm sorry from the get-go because y'all, this lady tore into me. She was like, accountability. How do you tell somebody? I was like, exactly what I mean, accountability.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's right on point because you're the healing, the responsibility for your healing once you become an adult, it's yours.
Yep.
It's yours.
Your life is always your responsibility, no matter what happens to you.
Yeah.
It's always all on you.
That is so true. Yes. Well, all right, Ms. Jermaine. So what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, one thing that I listened to the other day was Tom Hanks. He said, "This too shall pass." Oftentimes we spend so much time fretting over things that have happened, how things will go. If you just wait a little while, this too will pass. Even in happy times and sad times, things constantly change. So just be prepared for the shift.
Yeah, that's good.
I love that.
Yes, this too shall pass.
Yes,
it will.
It's something I heard in church growing up, and you forget it over time. But that simple statement is everything.
It is. It's everything.
I'm telling you. Even when he said it, I was like, in so many things, even in life and work, we get so caught up, or we think that this is my season. Even though this is your season, like you have to prepare when it's not your season. I spent many years in the military. We did so much time preparing for war, even when no war was coming, so that when it came, we would be ready.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yeah. Well, what does self-love mean to you?
Oh, authenticity, accountability, and being unapologetic.
Yes.
I think sometimes we apologize for being too big, coming in with our personality. We try to shrink ourselves to fit in rooms with people. And self-love means that you're not defining yourself by anybody else's standards, only your own.
Mm-hmm. That's good. That's good. So for both of you, one final question. What is your guilty pleasure?
Oh, reading. I don't watch a lot of TV. I read a whole lot. Right now, I'm toggling between 3 books: Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart, Michelle Obama's new book, and Atomic Habits.
Okay. So that is the first time I've heard anybody say it. Reading is a guilty pleasure.
Yes. I'm telling you, but when you think about knowledge, and there's so much stuff in TV, like my husband is an avid TV watcher, and oftentimes I get upset because there's no diversity or inclusion. Like he'll be watching a show, and I'm like, "Dang, no black people in the show. How does a world exist with no black people?" And he'll be like, "Well, that's just the theme." And so oftentimes it's hard to see black stories. So I don't know. Maybe I'm biased, so I don't participate. But yeah, books can transform you to another world.
Yes, and I'm an avid reader as well and writer. So yes, I love that. I love it. How about you, Ms. Delashawn?
I'm always watching something. So some of my guilty pleasures, my favorite shows are like First 48 and Friends. Very different. Depends on the moment. And then lately, y'all, I have been stuck on dog videos on Facebook. I don't know why.
Okay.
The other day, I was like, I want a dog and a bunny.
A dog and a bunny.
Yeah, dog and a bunny.
I'm gonna have to send you over to my cousin's house. She has 2 dogs, a bunny. She has a whole little farm going on in West.
Dogs are starting to just look so cute to me, and they just do the craziest. They talk back, and you don't understand them, so it's not like having a kid. You could and if I really have to be honest, I think I like huskies because they're the main ones who like.
Girl, you can have ours. She was outside when I got home. I thought I was gonna be late to this meeting because when I pulled up, my dog was outside.
I was like, okay, like outside by herself.
Outside the gate. She was in the backyard when I left. And when I pulled up, I seen that we have 3 dogs. I seen one running down the street, so I blow the horn at her like, "What you doing?" She runs up, and then coming from around the house is our husky. I'm like, "Oh my God."
You got to teach them, if you're going to go outside, you don't get caught outside. You got to come in the house before you get in trouble.
Listen, girl, they was out there living their best life.
Yes, they will do that. I had one that would get outside the fence. She'd go all around the neighborhood, his neighborhood. "We saw Keiko. You want us to go get her?" I was like, "No, she knows her way home. She'll be back."
See,
And she'll be right at the
Listen,
front door.
but
or
sometimes you have
neighbors open,
dogs that
she go
so
right
cute,
back
people
in
will
there.
pick them up.
Yes, they will.
Yes, they will. They
And-
will.
I have a friend who had a husky, and I went to go see her, and I was walking up the stairs, and every time he would go up the stairs, he would turn back to me, and he'd be like, "Rrr!" And I was like, "I'm coming. Don't you ever rush me now. I'm coming." And he just kept, I was like, "You just get upstairs and go." And he would just talk back, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm just liking dogs more and more."
Just too much.
Yes,
Okay.
you will love huskies. It has been a joy. We've had ours for about 2 years.
Yeah, they're great breeds. They are definitely great breeds. Well, ladies, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us this evening. I want to make sure that people know.
I have to show you my shirt that I got just for you today.
What is it? Hey, sis. Yes.
It says,
love
"Hey,
that.
sis," because y'all's group was "Sis, you good?" And I said, "Hey, sis, I got you." This is
I
from my
love
friend's
it. Yes.
line, Far From Broken. So I went and I when you told me, I was like, I'm gonna order a shirt from her.
Send me the link. I would love to.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. Her name is Tanasha McGuire. So I will definitely send you guys the link. She is a mental wellness brand. So a lot of her things focus on mental wellness and just calling attention to that, trying to break the stigma for mental health. Oftentimes people don't seek out counseling or, think that, that's not for me, and especially in our community. So I definitely wanted to support her today. When you told me and I seen it was like, "Sis, you good?" I was like, "Oh my God, that shirt is perfect."
It is. So we all gonna be rocking our Hey Sis shirts.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm gonna go order those.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wanted to see if either of you have any announcements, anything you have going on that you want to share. I know, Delashawn, you have the event coming up this weekend.
Yes.
So tell us about it.
So this year for Sexual Assault Awareness Month, usually I do a community event. We are going to do it. We're just going to wait until October and do a healthy before the holidays, when a lot of people struggle with trauma in general, especially when you have to be around family. So this year we did something a little different, and we did I Survived from Trauma to Triumph. The whole idea behind this is, for one, as sexual assault victims, we're not just always sexual assault victims. Sometimes we experience things like cancer, we experience divorce, we experience domestic violence. And as well as I have a good friend who this was really based off of, who had the hardest time of her life, who went through a divorce and sickness at the same time. And I wanted to just provide a safe space for women to understand that your trauma doesn't have to just remain trauma. It can turn to triumph at any moment. So we have some great women who are doing things in their lives. We have Lavinia Masters, who is actually behind HB8 here in Texas, where she made it so that they keep rape kits longer. And that way you have time to go ahead and report at a later time if you're not ready. So I'm thankful to have her speak about sexual assault. She spoke last year. We have Charlotte Horton Williams, Dr. Charlotte Horton Williams, who will speak on behalf of being divorced. She is an amazing woman. She is actually helping women, I would say, better themselves. She helps with resume assistance and trying to help with the education system.
She started one of my favorite Facebook group, Black Women Who Shop at Target.
Add me to that group.
Girl, you're going to have to ask her to add you, because trust me, it is a long list.
Wow.
I want to get in that group. But so she's going to speak. And then we have I love hearing the relationship advice from Coach Jay. She is a victim of domestic violence. And then we have a young lady who has experienced a form of sickness. Her name is Gigi. And then our host is Miss Twila B. Good, which I think is awesome. She is a sexologist, but just to have someone who's going to bring that fun aspect there is great to have. So we'll do stories of how they turned that trauma into triumph. We'll end it with panel discussions so that people can ask the questions they have. And then we're going to end the night. I'm not big on having events that send you home sad. So we're going to end with meditation, and then we're going to party. And by party, we're going to eat, we're going to mingle, and we're going to have some mimosas and just allow ourselves to kind of I would say shift ourselves back into the normal atmosphere instead of just remaining in our trauma before I
That's
send you guys
awesome.
home.
Okay.
If you're interested in coming, tickets are on sale until tomorrow at www.speakourtruth.org. Get them ASAP because I want to make sure we have enough food. I don't want to have too much, but I want to make sure we have enough. And I did it in a really pretty space for the idea of we are women, we are beautiful, and we deserve to have beautiful things around us. So why not finish and have a great experience? I will say the one thing I'm excited about is the balloon release. I know a lot of times when we think about the balloon release, we think about death. But what happens if we don't hold that trauma in and allow it to explode? What happens when we release it and send it to the air? So we'll write our trauma on the balloons and we're going to release those things and allow ourselves to be free.
That's awesome.
And take pictures.
Yes, awesomeness. All right,
Absolutely.
and Jamae, anything you'd like to
I
share?
Nothing really other than that Perspective Counseling and Family Services is taking new clients. Definitely reach out if you are in need of services or need to be connected to services. I would love to help you.
Okay.
Oh,
Do you
can I
have
add this in
social
there?
media? How did we connect
I
with you?
do. It's
Phone?
Perspective Counseling and Family Services on social media, or you
Okay.
can look up my name, Jamae Harris Edwards, on social media, on Facebook and on Instagram.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
Jamae is our therapist for Speak Our Truth.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
if you are a sexual assault survivor and you're looking for therapy, we are working with Jamae so that she can assist you, and we'll be taking care of the fees. It is, I believe we agreed to 3 sessions where we will help you, and then we'll look for further assistance afterwards. But Jamae is our therapist here at Speak Our Truth, and she will be helping our survivors. So, I am very
Absolutely.
excited about that
Absolutely.
and what's to
Yes.
come.
Yes, me
Absolutely.
too.
Me too. Me too.
That's awesome. Well, I do want to thank you again. It's been an awesome conversation. We will continue the conversation for sure. Um, but I do want to announce, just remind everybody that Sis You Good, our first spring retreat, annual retreat, is coming May 19th through the 21st in the beautiful Gathering Oaks in Crawford, Texas. We are focused on healing, sharing, and connecting with one another. So our focus is relax, relate, release, and restore, so
Ooh.
that we can go out and live the lives that we were created to live in all of its glory. So we hope to see you there. Tickets are available. Just go to sisugood.org and we have beautiful accommodations. The rooms are amazing. The food is going to be amazing. The activities are going to be amazing. We're going to have yoga and meditation, morning prayer walks.
Cool.
So come on out, sisters, and let's connect and let's heal together and let's celebrate one another. All right. Thank you so much. And we'll see
Thank
you next
you.
month when we talk about Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yes.
All right.
Yes, yes, yes. May.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank
Good
you.
Bye,
night.
y'all.